an Excelsior Studios original production. Throughout this podcast, sensitive subjects such as sexual assault, eating disorders, and suicidal thoughts will be mentioned. Listen with care. And throughout this podcast, you know this by now, but sometimes I will use AI to bring real social media posts and messages to life. And listen, I know it's annoying to keep pointing out that it's AI. Unfortunately, Megan keeps threatening to sue me for defamation when she gets out of jail in just 9 weeks, so I need to protect myself. So as you know, while the voices you're hearing are fake, the words they read are 100% real, and I unfortunately have to keep pointing them out to you throughout the episode so I don't get sued. All right, I'm excited.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got her.
By now, you've heard all about Megan's crimes over the years, but you're about to hear what many of the members of her community would describe as her worst crime, at least of the summer of 2023. This is the crime that made us come together to catch her and turn her into the police on September 9th of 2023.
We shredded into like an ethically gray area here with like some of the things we did to catch her. It's not right to impersonate a character usually, but to my mind, Megan impersonated 10 different characters to convince someone there was a murder for hire plot out against them. Every day that she was going to be out there, she was going to be ruining someone else's day, texting them from multiple different numbers all day, trying to get money out of them, trying to get them to get someone else to talk to her. I mean, we've all seen it. We've all been following this. Like she is relentless when she wants something. And she was supposed to be in jail. But on the other side of that, the cops were only going to look so hard for someone who was like a nonviolent offender, and she needed to be put up. And so we did what we did. If you don't like what we did, you don't have to live with it. We do, and we can. So there you go.
That's how Justin explained our decision to do what we did on a Twitter space right after the police caught her. I can't believe it's only been a year since this happened. On one hand, it feels like it was just yesterday. On the other hand, it feels like it's been a lifetime. And I have to be honest, I still feel morally gray about what we did to catch her, and I'm kind of embarrassed to release this episode and finally tell you all how the story ends. It's kind of insane. But I won't bore you with a long intro about my feelings on the matter. That is not what you're here for. Let's just get into the craziest episode yet of this series. I'm Amanda, and this is Don't Waste This Effing Podcast, the story of Megan Stoner. Like I said, before I tell you how we caught her, there's one more victim she scammed in the summer of 2023, and this is the story that put myself and many others over the edge. When we found out what Megan had done to him, we felt we had no other option but to step in and take action. We learned about this right around late July or early August of 2023. And remember, Megan's initial arrest was at the end of April of 2023, so just a few months prior. In July, Megan failed to appear for multiple court appearances, which meant she had violated the terms of her pretrial agreement and her bail was revoked. However, Megan did not turn herself in. Instead, she hid from the police in an Airbnb somewhere in Indianapolis. She kept claiming that her lawyer was telling her not to turn herself in when she was conversing with others on social media, and that was in between begging for $5 to $10 from her Twitter followers so that she could DoorDash her next meal. That way she wouldn't have to go out in public and risk getting caught. The constant begging for money was annoying enough. Remember, she was also begging for money for the moving company at this time and had a GoFundMe going. Once we learned how much money she had scammed from this next victim, it got even worse. This is an old friend of hers from her days of political involvement and advocacy. He wants to remain anonymous, so for the purpose of this story, we're going to refer to him by the name Tom.
Megan and I go back a ways. I was up in Indy. She was going to speak at a disability organization that I founded in 2019 for people on the autism spectrum at Indiana Bloomington. I taught up in Indy for a year, legitimately, unlike her. We'd go to hockey games, we'd hang out. We were friends.
Tom and Megan had been friends for years. They'd lose touch for a few months or for a few years, but when he moved from Bloomington, Indiana to Indianapolis to pursue a career in teaching, he reached out to her.
I reached out to her because she was in Indianapolis at the time, and she was the only other person I knew in Indianapolis at that time. And at that time, I was really struggling. It was COVID. I was teaching. I had no experience with teaching, and I needed a friend. And Megan was that friend. For one solid year, we would still go to Indy Fuel hockey games, and those were special occasions. At least they meant a lot to me. Even though we didn't say much during the hockey games, they meant something to me because I felt that this is somebody who's taken time out of their very busy schedule. As she said, she was in politics. I thought it was a great connection.
The two would hang out a couple times a month and talk about their jobs and politics. While Tom would talk about his job, Megan would claim that she was a political consultant. You know the drill by now. When she spoke about working in politics, she didn't bombard him with Google Voice numbers claiming to be the governor like you've heard in other stories. From what I've heard from him, she didn't really give him a reason to doubt her stories about working in the political world. Megan would take him to Indy Fuel games, the local Indianapolis minor league hockey team, which she had season tickets for. Tom doesn't recall her telling him where she got the tickets, but he doesn't remember ever paying for them. Others I've interviewed have also brought up the Indy Fuel tickets. They said she would tell people the tickets were gifted to her by a political client. Do you remember in the second episode of this series when I talked about how if people were not given a reason to be suspicious of Megan, there were Easter eggs they could pick up on that would signal she might be telling the truth about being a political consultant or other claims she made. The Indy Fuel tickets are one of those Easter eggs. It's a common thing for consultants to buy season tickets to sports teams to bring clients or potential clients to games. This, along with the Tesla, along with her posts on social media, it all gave the image that Megan was who she said she was to Tom. The two lost touch when he moved back to Bloomington when he switched jobs, and they went a few years without speaking.
For 2 years, I didn't really talk to her. I didn't hear from her. She didn't really say anything to me. But this changed in the summer of 2023. And I remember the exact date, May the 7th.
When Megan got out of jail after she turned herself in at the end of April, she began messaging virtually all of her Facebook friends and Twitter mutuals, saying she was in legal trouble and she needed help with bail money. This is when Megan reconnected with Tom. Understandably, he was put off at first.
Well, it was heartbreaking for me because here was this person who I assumed was very successful, doing well in Congress, changed the voting age, I believe it was, right? She said she had legislation on the books that she'd written to change the voting age in the state of Indiana. And I thought, wow, what an amazing person this is. How could she possibly be in a situation where she needs money for bond? What could she have possibly done? And she mentioned that she needed to pay a moving company. And I thought to myself, at least, on a salary like a job you have in government, it should be relatively easy to pay a moving company. I'm sure someone in government would help you out, maybe parental support. There wasn't resentment, there was just sadness for her.
So while Tom was put off, he also felt bad for her, and he sent her a little bit of money, which he was under the impression she would pay back. This is an old friend of his who had a steady job. She was just down on her luck. But this started months of harassment from her and from Google numbers claiming to be other people in order to extract more money from him.
It was definitely somebody purporting to be a banker from Bank of America who spoke to me about, all right, if you transfer this much money, that will cover the fees necessary to send you your money back. And of course, that never materialized. Of course, now I realize Abby was really Megan.
In addition to impersonating a banker, Megan would also text Tom from Google numbers claiming to be her mother. She'd go a few days or weeks without speaking to him, refusing to reply when he'd reach out asking when he would be paid back. And then she would bombard him late at night with more requests for money. Oftentimes, like in that clip, she'd do the kind of Nigerian prince scam I've mentioned before, where she would claim she was about to send back all of the money she owed him, plus a lot of interest sometimes, but she just needed a couple $100s to pay a transfer fee. Then Megan or the character she was impersonating would disappear on him again, or claim there was a problem with the bank. At one point, he refused to keep sending her money because he felt like he was being jerked around, and he told her he needed her to give him some sort of official document signed saying that she would pay him back. Within a day, she sent him a photo of a document saying she'd pay him back far more than she had taken from him, and it was signed by a notary public. That's how relentless she is. She got a notary to sign a document saying she'd pay him back. However, the cycle continued.
Around July 9th, I discovered the article on the Indianapolis Star, I think it was, that said Fisher's woman charged in rental scam. And I saw Megan's mugshot and I texted her about it. I said, "Why would you not tell me about this? You told me that it was for moving expenses. Why are you asking for this right now?" And she said, "Oh, please believe me. Please believe me. Please believe me." And I'm like, "Look, it's clear that you've done a lot of people wrong, but as someone who was your friend in Indianapolis, I want to be there for you. I want to defend you. If you want to make up for the wrongs you did, pay me back. I will defend you to the ends of the earth because I'm sure you respect me enough to do that."
Tom isn't being hyperbolic when he talks about how loyal he remained to Megan. He really was that loyal. He stood by her side for weeks after he found out the true reason she was arrested. When she initially reached out, she claimed she had been framed by her political rivals, that the lawsuit was all one big misunderstanding. Again, when I say there were Easter eggs throughout her online profiles that indicated she may be telling the truth about her life and career to someone who wasn't looking for confirmation she was lying, Tom had noticed mean comments from people on her social media posts throughout the years, and he assumed these were from political rivals she would often mention to him. It wasn't until 2 months after he had helped her out that he realized what she was actually in trouble for. And Megan did not take too kindly to his questions about the circumstance. She began threatening him, actually, saying if he continued questioning her, she would never pay him back.
I trusted her to pay me back. And so I allowed myself to get pulled back in. Again, it was my responsibility, but at the same time, when you're friends with somebody who you respect, it's very difficult to let yourself go from that friend, at least at that time.
So Megan kept playing Tom hot and cold, and their altercations left him feeling anxious. He had lent Megan thousands of dollars at this point, but it was all in smaller increments, so he wasn't exactly sure on the amount he had given her. At this point, Tom wanted to show his loyalty to Megan, that he would defend her to the group of people she had told him were harassing her online, as kind of a show of faith. Maybe subconsciously he wanted to ensure that she felt compelled to pay him back. So at this point, he reached out to the Megan Stoner Chronicles Facebook group and the Twitter account, both of which were private at this point. He reached out on an account that wasn't connected to his name, and the admins of the groups were concerned it was a fake account owned by Megan, trying to get into the group to see what was being said about her. To be fair, she had been trying to get into the group using fake accounts throughout the summer and defend herself, so it's understandable that the admins were wary of these strange accounts trying to get into the group at that point in the summer. And while Tom initially reached out to the group to defend Megan and was not let into the group, weeks went by and Megan continued to play him hot and cold. He ended up posting on Reddit asking for advice about what to do about the situation, and it was at that point he realized that he was being scammed by her. This was after sending her another substantial amount of money, again under the guise of transfer fees. He reached back out to the group, saying he believed he might be a victim, at which point the admins began talking to him. one of the admins of the group reached out to Justin, which resulted in an hour-long phone call between Tom and Justin, where they went through the details of what happened.
On July 31st, she said something along the lines of, "Can you give me $500 more? I'll pay you back 40,000." Well, an hour after she said that, I get a message from Justin.
Tom and Justin know each other from college Republicans years ago as well. They were able to piece together that Megan had scammed a substantial amount of money from Tom.
Of course, it's still very tough to say it. It was suffice it to say, it was between 10 and 15 thou.
Yes, you heard that correctly. Is your blood boiling at this point? Because mine is all over again. By the time the group members found this out, all of us were seeing red. She scammed that much money from someone on our watch throughout the summer. And not just anyone, a former friend of Megan's who has a disability. Tom has autism. At first, Tom didn't realize it was this much that he had lent her, because a lot of it was sent in small increments and directed to be sent across multiple accounts and recipients. So it was hard to keep track of the total amount. And the worst part? One of the recipients Megan directed Tom to send a payment to was her yoni practitioner, Haribo. Let's just back up for a second. Not only did she steal all of this money over about 3 months, but she was constantly begging for more money on social media throughout the same period. And I cannot emphasize this enough. She was evicted for non-payment during this time. She couldn't pay her moving company at this time. She had stolen all of that money, knowing she didn't have a job, knowing she was misleading Tom on the reason she needed the funds, and she didn't even pay her bills. She used it to pay her damn yoni practitioner. We'll get right back to the episode, but I want to remind you to please like and subscribe the episode. This is an independent podcast. Every like and subscriber counts. If you want to support this independent venture, I'm going to link a Buy Me a Coffee fund in the description below. I feel really weird doing this. I'm only doing it because people have asked. And if you want to learn how to make a podcast like mine, I've linked a course that teaches you how to do so in the description below as well. Okay, now back to the show. Justin and I were on the phone talking about all of this after one of his calls with Tom last summer, talking about how we felt like we were failures because another victim had been scammed right under our nose. It had gotten past the point of just being annoying to us. We felt personally responsible for what happened, and we weren't the only people who felt this way. I think everyone in the group who knew about the situation with Tom felt just as passionate and disgusted as we did. As Tom began to process what happened, he would reach out to Justin, asking him when Megan would be brought into jail and brought to justice. The annoying thing was, Justin didn't have an answer for him. All of this culminated about 2 weeks after Megan began running from the police. And like Justin said earlier, Megan was a first-time nonviolent offender. We knew they had gone to her mom's house once or twice to try and bring her in for violating her bail agreement, but they wouldn't go out of their way to track her down. Up to this point, I had never felt it was my responsibility or the responsibility of the group to go out and catch Megan. I thought our duty was merely to just spread awareness about Megan's wrongdoings and to prevent others from getting scammed. Learning about Tom's story changed my mind. One night, while I was on the phone with Justin, a crazy idea popped into my head that I thought might help us find her location. Or I thought, at the very least, if it didn't help us catch her, at least it was kind of funny. And clearly I never thought this through. I was never thinking about making a podcast explaining what we did. Honestly, I didn't even know if it would work. So, kind of embarrassing to say what we did. I'll just play how I explained it to the Twitter space. I had the idea, what is her kryptonite? What is the one thing that she loves, that she talks about all the time? And it's those yonis. So I'm like a brand and web designer. I kind of like do graphic design stuff for a living. So I, within about 25 minutes, put together a pretty legit looking online Instagram account, pretending to be a yoni practitioner. We bought followers. Like Justin and I were cracking up because he was like out on a walk. So when he finally saw it, he was like, oh my God, I can't believe how real it looks. And guess what? It worked.
I want to be your first client.
That's the AI voice of Megan reading one of the first messages we received from her on the Instagram account I created. It came a couple weeks after I made the account, and her initial messages were very persistent. And like usual, very late at night.
I would love to join the wait list. Is this a male massage therapist or female? Are you still awake? I'd love to have a call tonight. I'm really crossing my fingers that we get to work together. Can I ask how old you are?
These texts are all read by AI, and all of those texts came within the first 24 hours of Megan finding the account on Instagram. She found it a week or so after we created it and followed her. Clearly, Megan got invested pretty quick. Justin and I were like, wait, holy shit, this is working. However, there were some caveats. Justin and I did no formal research on what yoni practitioners do and what they sound like. We listened to one phone call from Megan with a former practitioner who spoke to a community member earlier in the summer. And that's all we knew about the field. Justin and I are not the most sex-positive people in the world. Honestly, this stuff really grosses me out. We didn't want to do the research. And full disclosure, while I created the account, Justin was the only one who dealt with responding back and forth with Megan. As you can probably tell, she got very infested and very overbearing, very, very quickly. Not only did she want to learn about the practitioner that we created, but she immediately was giving pointers on which seminars to go to for ISTA. That is apparently the organization that sanctions these types of practitioners.
I did a couple sessions with my boyfriend's provider in New Jersey, which went amazing and absolutely loved him. I'm currently working with a coach from LA that is also ISTA trained. I also highly recommend into ISTA trainings if you want to go deeper. Those are the sorts of qualifications I look for. Also, I've heard the field is a training that is also great. Not as erotic as ISTA, but it's helpful with trauma-informed teachings. I highly, highly suggest not rushing into this as a provider. IDK what your support group looks like, but if you are not grounded, your clients will pick up on it. I've worked with 3 different ISTA-trained professionals, and I've never been disappointed. I worked with a provider in a container of 4 in-person sessions, and our relationship was very rocky. He could not hold me the way I needed to be held. I have the founder of ISTA on speed dial.
Again, all of those texts were read by AI. I find it so funny that she immediately tried to present herself as an authority to the point where she was telling a service provider she wanted to hire how to do their job. And there's something I should mention before we continue. There were a lot more people running missions to catch Megan besides me and Justin, and we didn't know about the other plans going on. Funny enough, the day after I created the account for True Renewal Bloomington, the plan where people got the closest to catching Megan went down, and again, we had no idea about it. Alyssa texted Megan posing as a journalist trying to buy the rights to Megan's life story and offered to meet her in person to give her some money. Again, Megan was begging for money online constantly. Vero and Alyssa drove down to meet Megan near the Airbnb she was staying at, and Alyssa sat with Megan while Vero drove away and called the police. Once Megan realized what was happening when the police got there, she tried to run, but they arrested her and put her into the back of the cop car to take her to jail. It was only after they put her in the car that they realized the warrant out for her arrest was in another county and it was not extraditable. Therefore, they had to let Megan go. I think everyone deserves credit for their efforts to try to catch Megan. Again, while I didn't go into this with the intent to run a scheme to put her in jail, after we all found out about the Tom story, everyone felt it was necessary, although we didn't all communicate about it and come up with plans together. And that wouldn't have made sense. There were 1,300 people in the Facebook group. There were too many people to coordinate with. In hindsight, something that differentiated the plan Justin and I carried out is we posed as an outsider who knew nothing about Megan and her story. In a way, I wonder if this made Megan trust us more, because she began messaging the character we created, and we acted standoffish and professional, as any business professional would. We also didn't press her to get information. I think that her feeling like she needed to chase this fictional character and not feeling compelled to speak about her current legal problems ultimately is what made our plan work. Let me tell you, she chased. She was adamant about scheduling a call, which we were nervous about, because the character was male, and we knew Megan would recognize Justin's voice. So we called in a friend who offered to act as a character, Xavier, for a quick phone call with Megan.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, is this Megan?
It is. Good to connect.
Hey, Megan, this is Xavier. I'm so glad that we get connected.
Yeah.
How's your night been?
Pretty good. Thank you for making time.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I live in Indy, and I have been with a couple different practitioners that do this work. And unfortunately, as you know, no one here does it. And so I've had to deal with flying them in or flying out to them. And it's been really, I feel like that part has been really hard. And I don't know, it's hard. It's been really hard having an out-of-state coach. There's something about the connection of this work. And I don't know, like for you, but there definitely is a lot of power to the in-person work, you know?
It's really exciting to see somebody that cares about this, as much as I am, believes in the healing that can result from it too.
Oh, without a doubt. I am definitely a big fan of this work, if you can't tell. At first, when I first did it in February of this year, I thought it was I was like, oh, this sounds a little woo-woo. Like, I don't think this is going to work. But you know what? I was open-minded. I tried it, and I was like, holy fuck. This stuff moves mountains quicker than anything I've ever done in my healing journey. My first practitioner definitely could not hold the complex trauma that I bring. And so our work ended abruptly. We went out, my significant other and I, my partner, we went out over Memorial Day weekend.
I mean, that's such, I think that's a systemic problem that we have, is that, people that need this care can't get it. It's a luxury for a lot of people when it needs to be more, basic need and be treated as like a lot of healthcare. I know that's probably way forward looking in the future, but hopefully we can get to a point where people see it as needed healthcare, not kind of this, weird manifestation, because I think it is some of the most powerful work that I've seen, especially in the field of trauma, healing, and, sacred spaces.
Oh, without a doubt. I don't want to play too much of the call because although this is technically not sanctioned therapy, it still feels kind of wrong. However, I will point out a few things. I think it is so funny that they both just repeat this work back to each other. It sounds like they both don't really know what they're talking about, but they're mirroring each other. I also think it's interesting that Megan makes mention of a lot of things that she's been called out for before. She insists she has a boyfriend named Jake. At this point, it was widely debunked on social media that Megan didn't have a boyfriend, partner, or fiance named Jake. The way she tells the story about her past and current coaches is interesting. Obviously, no mention of the false police report that she had filed about a month prior, accusing her former coach of sexual assault. She also brings up that she went to New Jersey to see a coach, presumably Haribo, over Memorial Day weekend. That is when she filed a request with the court to go visit a dying relative in New Jersey, but instead we believe she went to see a yoni practitioner, which she seems to confirm here. She also doesn't really bring up what she's trying to heal. She talks about healing a lot, but doesn't specify what she seeks to heal from. Also, at this point, remember, the practitioner she's speaking to, she is not told about her legal troubles at the time. So, to her knowledge, this person has no idea that she's in any sort of legal trouble. After a few more minutes of chatting, where Megan bizarrely claims she is now pursuing a PhD in this type of sexual healing psychology from Liberty University, one of the nation's leading evangelical Christian universities. I'm not so sure they sanction this type of practice there. They end the call, and Megan seems eager to schedule an in-person session. However, right after hanging up, she sends this message.
I would love to meet in Indy. I will say I appreciate connecting tonight, but if we are going to work together, I enjoy not feeling rushed.
Again, that's the AI voice of Megan. So kind of a 180 from rushing to set up an in-person meeting on the call to saying she prefers not to feel rushed. At this point, she also started getting kind of aggressive, trying to switch from Instagram Messenger to Telegram, which brought about this bizarre exchange.
Hey, Megan, thank you so much for connecting back today. As I mentioned before, that's not a platform I'm familiar with. I appreciate you communicating that need to me. I just need some space to figure out this new medium. Feeling safe and open communication are the highest priorities of this important work that we do. Your mental health is my highest priority.
Thanks. I will be unavailable on Instagram. If you wish to continue this work with me, please reach out on Telegram. Thanks. I'm just trying to cut social media out of my life. If you're not able to meet this need, I understand. I just no longer feel safe communicating here and don't use it for business purposes. Thanks so much for understanding.
Hey, Megan, thank you so much for connecting back today. As I mentioned before, that's not a platform I'm familiar with. I appreciate you communicating that need to me. I just need some space to figure out this new medium. Feeling safe and open communication are the highest priorities of this important work that we do. Your mental health is my highest priority.
Okay, thanks. Feel free to reach out when you and if you download it. Would love to do work with you. Just not going to keep crossing my own boundary. Thanks.
And then 10 minutes later,
I have spent thousands in this work and never had an issue with a provider hopping on an app that is encrypted where I can feel safe. Strange. I just want to make sure after being cyberbullied that I'm talking to a real person. I don't even know your last name. You're not on any of the provider websites. I would need to see your face before any money exchanges here.
Obviously, all of these exchanges are read by AI. And just as a point of clarification, while Justin was the one communicating with Megan back and forth, acting as the Yoni practitioner, I put an AI voice of our friend who stepped in and did the call with her, who wishes to remain anonymous, so it won't get confusing. Thank you again, Anonymous Xavier. Given Megan's pushback, which seemingly came out of nowhere, Justin and I decided to tell Megan we wouldn't speak to her all weekend in a nice, professional way. And for what it's worth, I don't blame Megan for starting to get paranoid that she might be getting played, because ultimately she was getting played. She didn't respond for a while, but later that night she sent this.
Please download Telegram.
Again, that's AI. Justin, acting as the fake Yoni character, maintained his boundary and didn't respond. Justin might have been a little bit mad at me at this point. Dealing with the constant text from Megan at all hours of the day was not fun. And given her sudden change, it looked like we might have been doing all of that for nothing. However, later that night, I posted an Instagram story to the account of a sunset, just to see if Megan watched it. It had some weird quote on it too, I don't remember what it said. Megan never posts Instagram stories, but that night she posted one of a similar sunset, with what seemed to be a hidden message meant for the character. Looking back, it's at this point that Justin began to believe this plan might actually work. I know this all seems petty, and it kind of is, but this enveloped our lives for the next few weeks. An idea I had, which was partially meant to be a joke, all of the sudden just engulfed us. Megan began texting the character constantly, and Justin and I had arguments about how to respond, because we knew we needed to maintain a professional balance with her, but also make her feel comfortable enough that she might eventually give us details about where she was at or be willing to meet us in public. I wanted to go harder on Megan. Justin wanted to go softer. Ultimately, we kind of compromised and landed in the middle, which seems to have worked out. Up to this point in the series, you've heard from secondhand accounts of interactions between Megan and others. This is the first time I ever somewhat interacted with her, and again, it wasn't really me, it was mostly Justin. Let me tell you something. All of the accounts up to this point of people saying she's just exhausting to deal with are not lying. It reminds me of what Devora said in the episode last week about how it's a common occurrence with one of the diagnoses Megan purports to have, which is borderline personality disorder. But while on one hand she's exhausting, on the other she seems very normal. Here's what our friend who played the voice of Xavier had to say about his conversation with her.
And I think the doubting, even in the phone call when I had a conversation with her, was she had come off as so normal and come off as so committed to this cause when we know because of evidence that she was using crimes for her own gain, but it didn't come off that way any time in a phone call. And it's really unsettling that I could have a conversation with someone and not believe that someone else could be talking to me the same way and that I can be misled by someone else. And I think that damages people in a way that it makes them lose trust in people and trust in charity and trust in just, I think, decency. And that is that offers so much damage to our like collective psyche.
Dealing with her firsthand, It makes more sense than ever to me how she was able to get away with scamming people for so long, and why so many people in the group felt convicted to go after her. She's so good at deception, like Xavier just said, it makes you question every other interaction you have. He knew almost everything she said on her call with him was a lie, but during the conversation, it flowed so naturally, it's almost uncanny, and it makes you paranoid that if someone is that good at lying, could everyone be lying to you? Dealing with her was already this traumatic, and she hadn't even told our character about her legal troubles yet. That's where things get interesting, but you'll have to wait for next week to hear about that. I'll leave you with one final thought here. If you're upset about the Tom story, like I was, like all of us were, I'm very happy to tell you that he's doing well today.
After this all came to an end and she was caught in September, I remember feeling as though a weight was lifted off my shoulder. I breathed a huge sigh of relief. But even so, there was still that feeling of, oh my God, look what she did to me. How can I trust anybody ever again? And so what I did was I ended up getting out of my apartment a lot more. And I remembered that there is a community for me right here in Bloomington, and that is my radio station community. I do a radio program at WFHB News Bloomington on individuals with disabilities, and that branches out from the passion I've had since college to advocate for people with disability and report the news on that community, which often goes unreported. And since Megan's arrest, my show has branched off from the news into its own segment that airs on Tuesdays on the radio. I'm now in cognitive behavioral therapy treatment and taking on my anxiety that I've had for, by the way, far longer than I've known Megan. But I will say, I owe Megan a small debt of gratitude because this woke me up in a way to realizing that my fears control me a little bit too much. And it's not wrong to ask for psychological assistance from other people. I thought that I needed to take it on myself, but at the same time, look what happened when I tried to take it on myself. I ended up nearly screwing over my mental health. But at the same time, I'd say that I've grown a lot over this, and it could have been a lot worse. And, there probably are others who have gone through way worse than I have, and I recognize that. But I do think that at the end of the day, there is light at the end of this tunnel. And, I'm moving on. Everybody else in this situation is moving on. And I know that no matter what happens, everything is going to be okay.
It's nice to know there may be some slight light at the end of that tunnel. But until next time, I'm Amanda, and this is Don't Waste This Effing Podcast.